The power had been out for 20 minutes when Elena heard the scratching at her clinic door. She paused, flashlight in hand, and listened. The late October storm raged outside, but this sound was different from wind-blown debris. Deliberate. Desperate. Scratch. 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 Elena made her way through the darkened veterinary clinic, her flashlight beam dancing across familiar equipment. She'd been trying to get the backup generator running when the scratching started. Now, as thunder shook the old Victorian building, something large pressed against the door. She opened it to find the most magnificent dog she'd ever seen. A husky, easily 120 pounds, silver-black fur soaked from the storm. But it was his eyes that stopped her, cold, amber, intelligent, and looking directly into hers like he'd been searching for her specifically. Blood matted his fur along his ribs and shoulder, the wounds clearly fresh but strangely precise. "Easy, boy." She kept her voice soft as she examined him. "Let's get you." Amber eyes snapped open, locking onto hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. Not the glazed look of a dying animal, but sharp, aware, almost human. A jolt of pain shot through her skull, sudden and fierce. Elena gasped, pulling her hands back as the headache hit like lightning. The dog's eyes never left her face, and for one impossible moment, she could have sworn she saw recognition there. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, fighting through the pain to gather him carefully in her arms. He was dead weight, but he didn't struggle. Didn't even whimper. The 20-minute drive to her clinic felt like hours. Elena kept glancing in the rearview mirror at the dog stretched across her truck bed, those intelligent eyes still watching her through the back window. Her clinic sat above her small apartment on the outskirts of Cedar Falls, a converted Victorian that had seen better days but served her purposes. Elena had bought it with cash 3 years ago, along with everything else she'd needed to start over. Start over from what, she still couldn't say. The doctors called it selective amnesia, trauma-induced memory loss. Elena called it a blessing most days. She set up the examination table and lifted the dog onto it with more effort than she cared to admit. Under the bright surgical lights, his condition looked worse. The claw marks ran deep along his ribs and shoulder, and there was something else, burns in a pattern she didn't recognize scattered across his hindquarters. "What happened to you?" she murmured, starting in 4-line. His eyes tracked every movement she made. "And why do I feel like you understand every word I'm saying?" The headache returned the moment her bare hands touched his fur to clean the wounds. Sharp, insistent, like someone hammering against the inside of her skull. Elena gritted her teeth and kept working. She'd dealt with worse pain than this. 2 hours later, the dog, Storm, she'd decided to call him, was stitched, medicated, and resting in the recovery area she'd set up in her spare room. The wounds would heal, though the scarring would be permanent. What bothered her more were those burns. They looked ritualistic, like symbols she should recognize but couldn't quite place. "Get some rest," she told him, scratching behind his ears. Storm's eyes drifted closed at her touch, and for the first time since she'd found him, he looked peaceful. The headache eased, replaced by something warmer, almost familiar. Elena shook her head and headed for bed. She was exhausted, probably hallucinating the whole strange connection thing. Dogs were just good at reading human emotions, that was all. But sleep brought no peace. She dreamed of wolves running through moonlit forests, their howls echoing off ancient trees. She dreamed of fire and chanting, of hands raised toward a blood-red moon. And through it all, a voice calling her name, not Elena, but something older, something that made her soul ache with longing. "Celine. Come home, Celine." She woke with tears on her cheeks and the taste of smoke in her mouth. Gray dawn light filtered through her bedroom windows. Elena sat up, disoriented, her head still pounding from whatever those dreams had been. Dreams, not memories, she was sure of that. Wasn't she? A soft whine drew her attention. Storm stood in her bedroom doorway, no longer the dying animal she'd rescued. He was magnificent, silver and black fur, intelligent amber eyes, and a presence that seemed to fill the room. The 4-line hung loose from his leg where he'd somehow managed to remove it without damaging the insertion site. "You shouldn't be up yet," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Storm looked perfectly fine, better than fine. The wounds that should have taken weeks to heal appeared to be, not gone, but definitely not fresh anymore. He padded closer, studying her with those unsettling eyes. When he reached the bed, he sat and placed one massive paw on her knee. The headache returned, but gentler this time, accompanied by images that flashed too quickly to grasp. Pack. Protect. Mine. Elena jerked back. She hadn't heard those words, they'd appeared in her mind, clear as day. Storm tilted his head, and she could have sworn he looked apologetic. "This is crazy," she whispered. "I'm talking to a dog who somehow healed overnight and is apparently telepathic." Storm's ears perked forward, and his tail wagged once. Slowly. Elena laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. "And you're agreeing with me?" She reached out tentatively to touch his head. The moment her fingers connected with his fur, the world exploded into sensation. Images crashed through her mind, a man with Storm's amber eyes, tall and broad-shouldered, reaching for her across flames. The same voice from her dreams, rough with desperation. "Find me, Celine. Remember." Elena snatched her hand back, heart racing. Storm whined softly and pressed closer, as if trying to comfort her. "Or keep her from running." "What are you?" she breathed. Storm's answer came not in words but in a feeling, ancient, wild, and completely devoted to her. Whatever he was, wherever he'd come from, he belonged to her now. And somehow, impossibly, she belonged to him too. Elena stared into those amber eyes and felt her carefully ordered world tilt off its axis. Storm looked back at her with an intensity that seemed far too human, far too knowing. "You're going to be just fine," she whispered, reaching out to stroke his head one more time before heading to bed. The moment her fingers touched his fur, Storm did something that made her blood run cold. He spoke her name. Not the name on her veterinary license, not the name she'd chosen when she'd started over 3 years ago with no memory of her past. He spoke the name from her dreams, the one that always left her crying and reaching for something she'd lost. "Celine," he whispered, so softly she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. Almost. Chapter 2. The pink collar was the final insult. Cale stared at his reflection in Elena's bathroom mirror, the cheerful flower-patterned collar around his neck a mockery of everything he was. Alpha of the Northern Pack, descendant of the first shifters, reduced to wearing accessories from the local pet store. "There," Elena said, adjusting the collar with obvious satisfaction. "Much better than that old rope I had lying around. And look," she attached a matching leash with little daisies on it. "Now we can take proper walks." Every instinct Cale possessed screamed at him to shift, to show her exactly what she was dealing with. But the curse held him trapped in this form, and worse, her touch sent warmth through his body that actually made the constant ache of the spell recede. For the first time in months, he felt almost normal. Even if normal meant eating kibble from a bowl labeled Storm in cheerful blue letters. "Good boy," Elena cooed, scratching behind his ears. "Let's go outside." "Good boy." Cale had commanded respect from wolves across 3 states. He'd negotiated territorial disputes and led hunts under the full moon. He did not fetch sticks or do his business in flower beds like some suburban pet. But he followed her anyway, because the alternative was losing the first peace he'd known since the curse began. The morning walk was torture. Elena clipped the flowered leash to his collar and led him around her neighborhood like he was an overgrown puppy. When Mrs. Henderson from next door stopped to coo over him, calling him such a pretty doggy, Cale seriously considered whether breaking the curse was worth maintaining any shred of dignity. "He's so well behaved," Mrs. Henderson gushed. "Most huskies are wild things, but this one's like he's been trained by a professional." Trained. Cale's lip curled in what Elena probably thought was a friendly expression. "He's special," Elena agreed, and something in her voice made Cale look up. She was watching him with those green eyes that seemed to see too much. "Very special." Back at the clinic, Elena's best friend Mia arrived with coffee and pastries, taking one look at Kale and raising an eyebrow. "Since when do you have a dog?" Mia plopped onto Elena's couch, studying Kale with the sharp eyes of a prosecutor, which, Kale remembered from their conversation, she was. "And since when do you have a dog that watches people like he's taking notes for later?" Elena laughed, but it sounded forced. "He's a rescue. Storm was hurt pretty badly when I found him." "Storm?" Mia's gaze never left Kale. "He doesn't look like any Storm I've ever seen. More like he's plotting world domination from that dog bed." Kale stretched out on the ridiculously plush bed Elena had bought him and tried to look harmless. The effect was somewhat ruined when Mia tossed him a piece of her croissant and he caught it with reflexes that were decidedly undog-like. "See what I mean?" Mia pointed at him. "Normal dogs don't have that kind of coordination." "And his eyes." She shivered. "It's like he understands every word we're saying." "Don't be silly." Elena settled onto the floor beside Kale's bed, absently running her fingers through his fur. "He's just smart." The moment Elena's hand made contact with him, Kale felt it, that strange warmth that seemed to flow from her touch. His wounds, which should have taken weeks to heal, were already nearly closed. The constant burn of the curse quieted to a whisper. Whatever Elena was doing, she wasn't aware of it, but power hummed just beneath her skin. Healer. The word rose unbidden in his mind. Not just any healer, a strong one, untrained but instinctively gifted. It explained why the curse's pain lessened around her, why his body craved her touch like a drug. "You know what's really weird?" Mia continued, apparently unaware that the subject of their conversation was following every word. "You've never wanted pets before. Said they were too much responsibility." Elena's hand stilled in Kale's fur. "Things change." "Since your accident, you mean?" Kale's ears perked forward. Elena had never mentioned an accident. "Mia." Elena's voice carried a warning. "I'm just saying, maybe you should talk to someone. The nightmares are getting worse, aren't they?" Elena pulled her hand away from Kale, and he had to resist the urge to follow the touch. "I'm fine. Waking up screaming about shadows chasing you is not fine, Elle. And don't tell me Storm here hasn't noticed. Dogs are sensitive to that kind of thing. Nightmares about shadows." Kale filed that information away. Elena's memory loss wasn't natural. Something had happened to her, something she was running from even if she couldn't remember what. After Mia left, Elena tried to pretend everything was normal. She cleaned the clinic, updated patient files, and attempted to teach Kale to sit and stay like a common house pet. The training session was humiliating on multiple levels, particularly when she rewarded his compliance with tiny treats shaped like bones. But when evening came and Elena finally relaxed, Kale saw the cracks in her cheerful facade. She moved through her apartment like someone expecting trouble, checking locks twice and pulling curtains closed even though they lived on a quiet street. When her phone rang, she jumped like she'd been shot. "Dr. Harmon," she answered, and Kale's enhanced hearing picked up both sides of the conversation. "How are you feeling today, Elena?" The voice was male, older, with the careful tone of someone managing a difficult patient. "Good. Better." Elena sank onto her couch, and Kale moved to sit beside her feet. "No episodes today." "That's excellent news. Any return of memory?" "No, nothing." Elena's free hand dropped to rest on Kale's head, and again he felt that soothing warmth. "Sometimes I think I'm close, like it's right there, but then. Don't push it. The mind heals in its own time." "Dr. Harmon, what if I don't want to remember? What if there's a reason I've forgotten?" A long pause. "Elena, we've discussed this. The memories will return when you're ready to handle them. Until then, you're safe where you are." Safe where you are. The word sent a chill through Kale. Elena wasn't in Cedar Falls by choice, she was hiding. "I found a dog," Elena said suddenly. "Or he found me. I've been having those dreams again, the ones where I'm running, but they're quieter now. Since Storm's been here. A dog? Dr. Harmon's voice sharpened with interest. Elena, we've talked about making connections. It's not wise to. He was hurt. I couldn't just leave him. You have to be careful. If they're looking for you. Who's looking for me? Elena's voice rose, and Kale felt her tension spike. You keep saying that, but you won't tell me who or why. When you remember, you'll understand why the secrecy is necessary. For now, just, be careful. And Elena? If anything unusual happens, anything at all, you call me immediately. Elena ended the call and stared at the phone in her hands. What am I running from? She whispered. Kale couldn't answer, but he could offer comfort. He rested his massive head on her lap and felt her fingers automatically begin stroking his fur. Whatever Elena was running from, whoever was looking for her, they'd have to go through him first. Even if he was stuck wearing a pink collar while he did it. Elena's breathing grew deeper as his presence calmed her, but Kale's mind raced. She wasn't just some random veterinarian who'd stumbled across him. She was someone important enough that powerful people wanted her hidden. Someone with healing abilities she didn't know she possessed. And something told him that whatever had stolen her memories was connected to the same dark magic that had cursed him. The question was, had Elena been in the wrong place at the wrong time that night, or had she been exactly where she was supposed to be? Chapter 3. The scent hit Kale's nose 3 blocks from Elena's clinic, death and dark magic wrapped in human form. He stopped dead on the sidewalk, every muscle in his body coiling with tension. Elena, oblivious to the danger, tugged gently on his leash. Come on, Storm. What's wrong with you tonight? She glanced around the quiet residential street, seeing nothing but porch lights and parked cars. You've been acting weird since we left the house. Weird didn't begin to cover it. Kale's enhanced senses screamed warnings that Elena couldn't perceive. 3 distinct scents, all wrong, all predatory. They'd been following for blocks, staying downwind and keeping their distance, but they were closing in. Hunters. Had to be the same ones who'd cursed him, finally tracking him down to finish what they'd started. Elena was just collateral damage, in the wrong place at the wrong time again. The smart thing, the alpha thing, would be to lead them away from her, circle back when she was safe. Kale made his decision in a split second. When Elena stepped toward the alley that would cut through to the park, he bolted in the opposite direction. The leash snapped tight, then broke entirely as Kale's 120 pounds of muscle hit the end of it. Elena stumbled backward with a cry of surprise. Storm. What the hell? But Kale was already gone, racing down Pine Street toward the industrial district. Behind him, he heard Elena calling his name, her voice growing fainter as he put distance between them. His heart twisted at the abandonment in that sound, but this was the only way to keep her safe. He ran for 6 blocks before his wolf instincts kicked in, the ones that had kept him alive as Pack Alpha for 15 years. The scents weren't following him. They were still near Elena. Terror, pure and primal, shot through Kale's chest. He'd miscalculated, assumed he was the target because his ego couldn't accept otherwise. But the hunters hadn't been tracking him at all. They'd been hunting Elena. Kale spun and ran back the way he'd come, pushing his cursed body to its limits. Please let him be wrong. Please let Elena be safely walking home, wondering where her stupid dog had gone. Please. He heard her scream when he was still 2 blocks away. The sound cut through him like silver, and Kale ran harder than he ever had in his life, human or wolf. He rounded the corner onto Maple Street and saw Elena's worst nightmare made real. 3 figures in dark hooded robes had her cornered in the narrow alley between Miller's Hardware and the old bookshop. Elena was pressed against the brick wall, her green eyes wide with terror that was rapidly shifting to something else, recognition. No, she was saying, backing away from them step by step. You're not real. You're just from the dreams. The dreams are memories, child. The center figure spoke with a voice like grinding stone. Memories of what you witnessed, what you survived. What you must now help us complete. Kale crept closer, staying in the shadows. In his current form, he was just a large dog, dangerous if cornered, but not supernatural enough to handle whatever dark magic these three carried. Still, he'd tear their throats out before he let them touch Elena. "I don't know what you're talking about," Elena said, but her voice shook. "I don't remember anything." "The bloodline remembers," another figure hissed. "It calls to us across the years. You cannot hide from what you are forever." "The ritual must be completed," the third one added. "Your family's interference delayed us, but did not stop us. The blood moon rises again in 3 days, and this time, there will be no one left to stand in our way." Elena's face had gone white, but something else was happening. The air around her seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Kale's enhanced vision caught what human eyes might miss, threads of silver light beginning to spiral around Elena's hands. "Stay away from me," Elena whispered, and power thrummed in her voice. The hooded figures stepped forward as one. "You will come with us willingly, or—" "I said stay away." Elena threw her hands up instinctively, and the alley exploded with light. Not ordinary light, something pure and wild and ancient that hit the three figures like a physical blow. They stumbled backward, crying out in voices that weren't entirely human. The light blazed so bright Kale had to squeeze his eyes shut, even as he launched himself from the shadows. He hit the first figure low and hard, his teeth finding purchase in whatever passed for flesh beneath those robes. The taste was like ash and rotting meat, but Kale held on grimly as the creature tried to shake him off. "The bloodline awakens," one of the others snarled, regaining their footing. "Good. It will make the harvest that much sweeter." Kale released his grip and spun to face them, placing himself squarely between Elena and the hunters. She was swaying on her feet behind him, the silver light flickering and fading around her hands. Whatever she'd done had drained her. "Kill the beast," the leader commanded. "Take the girl." But instead of advancing, the three figures exchanged glances that Kale couldn't read. Some kind of silent communication passed between them, and they began backing toward the mouth of the alley. "3 days, child," the leader called to Elena. "When the blood moon rises, you will fulfill your destiny whether you remember it or not. Your family's protections are weakening. Soon, there will be nowhere left to run. And next time," another added with obvious malice, "we'll be ready for your little light show." They melted into the shadows like smoke, leaving behind only the lingering stench of dark magic and Elena's ragged breathing. Kale turned to check on her and felt his heart stop. Elena was staring at her hands with a mixture of terror and wonder, silver light still dancing faintly around her fingertips. Her green eyes were huge in her pale face, and when she looked up at him, he saw the exact moment her mind tried to reject what had just happened. I didn't. She took a shaky step toward him. "Storm, what did I do? What was that light?" Before Kale could figure out how to respond without blowing his cover, Elena's eyes rolled back and she collapsed. He caught her before she hit the pavement, his large body breaking her fall. Elena was unconscious but breathing steadily, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been since he'd met her. Whatever had happened, whatever power she'd accessed, it had knocked her out cold. Kale gently nosed her face, whining softly. Elena's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. "Storm," she whispered. Where am I?" She tried to sit up, looking around the alley with obvious bewilderment. The brick walls, the scattered debris, even her own torn jacket sleeve, none of it seemed to register as familiar. "How did we get here?" Elena's voice was small, lost. "I remember walking you, and then, nothing." She had no memory of the attack. No memory of the hooded figures or the impossible light she'd summoned. Her mind had locked it all away, just like it had locked away whatever trauma had stolen her original memories. But Kale remembered everything. The bloodline. The ritual. The blood moon in 3 days. Elena wasn't just some random veterinarian who'd found an injured wolf. She was the last of something ancient and powerful, something these hunters needed to complete whatever dark magic they'd started years ago. Her family had died protecting her, and now their enemies had found her again. As Elena struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on Kale for support, he made a decision that went against every alpha instinct he possessed. He was going to protect her, pink collar and all. Even if it meant staying trapped in this form forever. Even if it meant facing enemies he couldn't defeat as a mere dog. Because somewhere in Elena's locked-away memories was the key to everything, his curse, her power, and the ritual that threatened them both. And in 3 days, when the blood moon rose, they were both going to need every weapon they could get. "Let's go home," Elena murmured, clipping the broken leash to his collar with shaking hands. "I'm tired, and my head hurts." Kale walked beside her slowly, matching his pace to her unsteady steps. Home sounded good, the clinic where Elena felt safe, where he could keep watch over her while she slept. But safety was an illusion now. The hunters knew where to find them, and they'd be back. Next time, they'd be prepared for Elena's power, whatever it was. Next time, a big dog and a confused healer might not be enough. As they walked through the quiet streets, Kale caught another scent on the wind, more hunters, different from the 3 they'd just encountered. The enemy wasn't just one small group. They were part of something larger, something organized. Something that had been hunting Elena's bloodline for a very long time. Elena might not remember who she was or what she could do, but her enemies certainly did. And they had 3 days to prepare for a ritual that would apparently give them everything they'd been working toward. 3 days to figure out how to break a curse, unlock Elena's memories, and stop a dark magic ritual with nothing but instinct and a love Kale was only beginning to understand. The pink collar had never felt so ridiculous, or so utterly beside the point. Chapter 4. The newspaper clipping fell from Elena's trembling fingers, the headline still visible as it drifted to the floor: "Local family dies in mysterious house fire, arson suspected." She stared at the photograph of her parents, faces she'd forgotten but somehow recognized, standing in front of a house that had burned to ash 23 years ago. The article was hidden in a shoebox she'd found in her clinic's storage room, along with documents that made her stomach turn cold. Birth certificates. Legal papers. And a handwritten note in her mother's careful script: "If you're reading this, Elena, then we failed to protect you. Trust Dr. Harmon. Trust no one else. The shadow circle will not stop until they have what they need from our bloodline." "Storm," Elena whispered, her voice breaking. The massive husky looked up from his bed, amber eyes filled with an intelligence that no longer surprised her. "My parents didn't die in an accident. They were murdered." Kale's heart clenched at the devastation in Elena's voice. He'd suspected something like this, but seeing her discover the truth was like watching her world crumble. He rose from his bed and padded over to her, pressing his large body against her legs in comfort. Elena's fingers found his fur automatically, and Kale felt the now familiar warmth of her unconscious healing energy flow through him. The curse had been weakening steadily over the past few days, loosening its grip whenever Elena touched him. But tonight felt different. The magical bonds felt gossamer thin, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. "The shadow circle," Elena continued, reading through more papers. "Dr. Harmon mentioned them once, I think. Said they were the ones looking for me." She looked down at Kale, tears streaming down her face. "What did my parents die trying to protect me from?" Before Kale could figure out how to respond, headlights swept across the clinic windows. Elena frowned, checking her watch. "It's almost midnight. Who could that be?" The car door slammed, and urgent footsteps approached the clinic entrance. Elena wiped her eyes and went to unlock the door, Kale right beside her. Dr. Harmon stood on the threshold, his usually composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. He was a tall, thin man in his 60s with gray hair and kind eyes that were currently filled with fear. "Elena, thank God you're safe." He pushed past her into the clinic, immediately locking the door behind him. "We need to leave. Now." "Dr. Harmon, what's wrong? Why are you here so late?" "They found you." His eyes swept the clinic nervously before settling on Kale. "And who is this?" "This is Storm. I told you about him, remember?" "Dr. Harmon, you're scaring me." Harmon studied Kale with the intensity of someone who knew more than he was letting on. Elena, where did you find this dog? He was injured outside my clinic. But that's not important right now. I found some papers about my parents. Dr. Harmon, were they really murdered by something called the Shadow Circle? Harmon's face went ashen. You found your mother's emergency cash. Elena, we don't have time for this conversation here. The Shadow Circle has been tracking magical signatures, and your recent activities have made you visible to them again. Recent activities? Elena looked confused. What are you talking about? The power you used 3 nights ago. The barrier of light you created. Harmon's voice was urgent. Elena, you may not remember it consciously, but your abilities are awakening. That makes you incredibly dangerous to them, and incredibly valuable. Kale's ears perked forward. Dr. Harmon knew about the attack in the alley, which meant he'd been watching Elena more closely than she realized. I don't understand any of this, Elena said, frustration evident in her voice. Magical signatures? Barriers of light? I'm a veterinarian, not some kind of witch. You're so much more than that. Harmon moved to the window, peering through the blinds. Elena, your family bloodline goes back centuries. You're descended from the original wolf healers, humans who could channel the Earth's energy to heal and protect werewolf packs. The Shadow Circle has been hunting your family for generations, trying to corrupt that power for their own use. Wolf healers? Elena's voice was faint. That's impossible. Is it? Harmon gestured toward Kale. How do you explain your connection to this animal? How do you explain the fact that his wounds healed in days instead of weeks? Elena's hand dropped to rest on Kale's head, and he felt the curse shiver at her touch. She was beginning to understand, even if she couldn't accept it yet. They want to use your power in a ritual, Harmon continued. Something that will give them control over every werewolf pack in North America. Your parents died to prevent it 23 years ago, and now. The front windows of the clinic exploded inward. Kale reacted on instinct, launching himself toward Elena as dark-robed figures poured through the broken glass. But these weren't the same 3 from the alley. There were at least 6 of them, moving with supernatural speed and coordination. Take the girl alive, one commanded. Kill the others. Elena screamed as magical energy crackled through the air, dark tendrils reaching for her. Dr. Harmon threw himself between Elena and the nearest attacker, crying out as shadow magic struck him in the chest. Kale felt something snap inside him, not the curse, but his control. His mate was in danger, and he was trapped in a form too weak to protect her properly. The change began without his permission. Bones elongated and muscles expanded as Kale shifted partially, becoming something between wolf and man, a creature of claws and fangs that could tear through supernatural threats. He heard Elena gasp behind him, but there was no time to explain. The first Shadow Circle member reached for Elena, and Kale's claws opened his throat. The second one raised a hand crackling with dark magic, and Kale's jaws crushed his arm before the spell could form. The beast, one of them shouted. He's not just a dog, he's a shifter. Impossible, another hissed. The binding curse should have. Elena's power erupted. This time, there was no unconscious barrier or instinctive defense. Elena raised her hands with deliberate intent, and pure silver light poured from her fingers like liquid starfire. It hit the remaining Shadow Circle members and sent them flying, their robes smoking from the contact. But more importantly, Elena's power washed over Kale like a cleansing tide. The curse shattered. 23 years of magical binding snapped like broken chains, and Kale's body completed its transformation in a rush of sensation that left him gasping. When the light faded, he knelt on the clinic floor in human form, tall, broad-shouldered, with amber eyes and dark hair, completely naked and completely free. Elena stared at him in shock. You're a man. Elena, Kale said, his voice rough from disuse. The first word he'd spoken to her in his true form. I can explain. You can talk. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. You've been able to talk this whole time. Before Kale could respond, Dr. Harmon struggled to his feet, clutching his chest where the shadow magic had struck him. His face was grim as he looked between Elena and Kale. "There's something else you need to know," Harmon said urgently. "Something your parents never told you because they hoped it would never matter." Elena was still staring at Kale, trying to process the fact that her beloved pet was actually a man who'd been living in her home, eating from her hand, sleeping in her bed. The betrayal in her eyes cut deeper than any curse. "What else?" she asked without looking away from Kale. "The prophecy," Harmon said quietly. "Every wolf healer bloodline comes with one, passed down through the generations. Yours is complicated." "Just tell me," Elena demanded. Harmon took a shaky breath. "The last daughter of the wolf healer line will either save the werewolf race or destroy it entirely. Her choice will determine whether shifters continue to exist or fade into extinction forever." Elena finally looked away from Kale, her green eyes wide with horror. "That's why they want me. Not just for my power, but because of what I might do with it." "Yes," Harmon confirmed. "The Shadow Circle believes they can force you to choose destruction, to use your abilities to bind every werewolf in North America to their will. But Elena, the choice is still yours. It will always be yours." Elena looked around her destroyed clinic, glass everywhere, furniture overturned, her carefully ordered life in ruins. Then she looked back at Kale, who was still kneeling on the floor, waiting for her to decide whether he was her protector or just another person who'd lied to her. "I need time to think," she said finally. "About all of this." "Time is the one thing we don't have," Harmon warned. "The blood moon rises tomorrow night. If the Shadow Circle completes their ritual, then we stop them," Elena interrupted, surprising everyone including herself. She straightened her shoulders, and for the first time since Kale had known her, she looked like the powerful woman she was destined to become. "But first, someone needs to explain to me exactly what being a wolf healer means, and what this prophecy really entails." She turned to Kale, her expression unreadable. "And you need to tell me who you really are and why you've been pretending to be my dog." Kale met her gaze steadily, ignoring his nakedness and the chaos around them. "My name is Kale MacReynolds. I'm the alpha of the Northern Pack, and I was cursed by the Shadow Circle 6 months ago." He paused, then added quietly, "And I would do anything to protect you, Elena. Anything at all." Elena stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "We'll see about that. But first, they had a ritual to stop and a prophecy to fulfill, one way or another." Chapter 5. Elena woke up to find a naked man making coffee in her kitchen. For a moment, her sleep-fogged brain tried to process this as normal. Then reality crashed over her like ice water, and she remembered everything: the attack, the transformation, the fact that Storm was actually Kale MacReynolds, alpha of the Northern Pack and apparently the most feared werewolf on the West Coast according to Dr. Harmon's hurried explanations. Kale looked up when she entered the kitchen, and Elena's breath caught. She'd seen glimpses of his human form during the chaos last night, but now, in the soft morning light, she could really look at him. Tall and powerfully built, with dark hair that wanted to curl and those same amber eyes that had watched her so intently from his dog form. He'd found clothes somewhere, jeans that were too short and a t-shirt that stretched tight across his broad chest. "Good morning," he said carefully, like he was talking to a spooked animal. Elena wanted to scream. Or cry. Or throw something at his head. Instead, she poured herself coffee with shaking hands and tried to pretend her world hadn't completely imploded. "So," she said, proud that her voice came out steady. "You're not actually a dog." "No." Kale leaned against the counter, maintaining careful distance between them. "I'm not. And you've been lying to me for a week." "Not lying. I couldn't speak in that form, Elena. The curse." "Oh, don't." Elena slammed her mug down, coffee sloshing over the rim. "Don't you dare make excuses. You let me pet you. You slept in my bed. You let me baby talk to you and give you treats and put a collar on you." Her voice rose with each word. "How could you do that to me?" Kale's jaw tightened. "Because I was trapped. Because the curse bound me to wolf form and I had no choice. Because you were the first person in 6 months who showed me any kindness. Kindness you didn't deserve under false pretenses. False pretenses? Kale's own voice sharpened. Elena, I may have been in wolf form, but everything I felt for you was real. Every moment I comforted you, every time I protected you, that was real. Elena turned away from him, staring out the kitchen window at the morning traffic. Normal people going to normal jobs, living normal lives where the men they cared about didn't turn out to be legendary werewolves with enemies trying to kill them. Tell me about the curse, she said quietly. Dr. Harmon said your brother did this to you. Kale was silent for so long Elena thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. Marcus is my younger brother. We were both in line for the alpha position when our father died, but the pack chose me. Kale ran a hand through his hair. Marcus never forgave me for that. He spent years gathering allies, making deals with dark magic practitioners, building power in the shadows. Elena turned back to face him. The Shadow Circle. Among others. 6 months ago, Marcus challenged me for leadership of the pack. It should have been a fair fight, but he'd made a bargain with the Shadow Circle. They would curse me if I won, trapping me in wolf form until... Kale's voice trailed off. Until what? Until I found my mate and she willingly gave her life to break the curse. Elena's blood ran cold. What? The curse was designed to be unbreakable unless the one person destined for me chose to sacrifice herself to free me. Marcus assumed I'd never find that person, or that if I did, she'd never make that choice. But I didn't sacrifice myself, Elena protested. I'm still here. Because you're not just any mate, Kale said quietly. You're a wolf healer. Your power is strong enough to break curses without the sacrifice clause. Marcus didn't count on that. Elena stared at him, pieces clicking into place. That's why he wants me. Not just for the Shadow Circle's ritual, but because as long as I'm alive and free, I can break his curses. Yes. And if I help other cursed werewolves. His power base crumbles. Kale met her eyes. Elena, there are dozens of wolves Marcus has cursed over the years. Pack members who opposed him, alphas from other territories who refused his demands. You could free them all. Before Elena could respond, every window in her house rattled with the force of an otherworldly howl. Kale went rigid, his human form tensing like he was fighting the urge to shift. He's here. Marcus? With a full pack by the sound of it. Kale moved to the front window, peering through the blinds. Elena, I need you to listen to me very carefully. My brother is not like the Shadow Circle cultists. He's alpha-born, magically enhanced, and absolutely ruthless. If he gets his hands on you, he won't. Elena joined Kale at the window and felt her heart sink. At least a dozen wolves prowled around her property, their eyes glowing with unnatural light. In the center of them stood a man who looked like a darker version of Kale, same height and build, but where Kale radiated protective strength, this man emanated cruelty. Marcus cupped his hands around his mouth and called out, his voice carrying easily through the morning air. Brother. I know you're in there. Come out and let's discuss this like civilized wolves. He knows I can't shift, Kale muttered. The curse may be broken, but it takes time for the ability to return fully. What does he want? You. And if he can't have you willingly, he'll take you by force. Elena closed her eyes, feeling power stir restlessly under her skin. Since last night's awakening, the energy felt different, stronger, but also hungry. Like it was feeding on something she couldn't identify. There's something else, she said slowly. Something Dr. Harmon told me last night that I haven't had time to think about. Kale looked at her. What? He said my powers come with a price. Every time I use them, it shortens my human lifespan. Elena met Kale's shocked gaze. The more power I channel, the faster I age and die. That's impossible. Is it? Think about it, Kale. All that energy has to come from somewhere. Wolf healers probably had short, brilliant lives, burning themselves out to help others. Elena felt tears threaten. Dr. Harmon thinks I have maybe 5 years if I use my abilities sparingly. Less if I do something major like break multiple curses. Outside, Marcus called again. I'm not a patient man, Cale. Send out the healer, and I'll let you live. Keep her, and I'll tear this place apart with both of you inside. Elena looked at Cale, seeing her own desperation reflected in his amber eyes. He's your brother. Surely there's some way to reach him, to make him understand. Marcus killed our father to claim power early, Cale said flatly. He tortured pack members who questioned his methods. Elena, there's no reasoning with him. There's only stopping him. Which I could do, Elena said quietly. I can feel how strong my power is now. I could probably break every curse he's ever cast, free every wolf he's enslaved. And kill yourself in the process. Elena stared out at the wolves surrounding her home. Some of them looked young, barely more than teenagers. Others were clearly suffering, their movements wrong in ways that suggested magical bindings. How many? She asked. What? How many wolves has Marcus cursed? How many people could I save? Cale grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Elena, no. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for my problems. They're not just your problems anymore. Elena pulled away from him, power crackling faintly around her hands. I'm the last wolf healer. This is what I was born for, isn't it? To help werewolves? Not to die for them. Maybe that's my choice to make. Another howl shook the house, closer this time. Through the window, Elena could see Marcus approaching the front door, his pack flanking him in formation. Time's up, she whispered. Cale moved to stand beside her, his body radiating tension. Whatever happens, stay behind me. Promise me that. Elena looked at him, this man who'd been her gentle companion, her protector, her friend. Who'd endured humiliation and restraint to keep her safe. Who was asking her to let him die rather than risk her own life. I can't promise that, she said softly. Elena. The front door exploded inward, and Marcus stepped through the debris with a smile that made Elena's blood freeze. Hello, brother, he said, his voice pleasant as if they were meeting for lunch. And you must be the infamous Elena Russo. Such a small thing to cause so much trouble. Marcus's eyes swept over her with obvious hunger. I can feel your power from here, little healer. It sings in your blood like music. No wonder Cale couldn't resist claiming you. I haven't claimed anyone, Cale snarled, moving protectively in front of Elena. No? Then you won't mind if I do. Marcus gestured, and 2 of his wolves moved to flank Cale. Elena, dear, you have a choice. Come with me willingly, and I'll make your death quick when the time comes. Resist, and I'll let my pack play with both of you first. Elena felt power rising in her chest, silver light beginning to dance around her fingertips. She could end this now. Free every cursed wolf, break Marcus's hold over his pack, probably kill him in the process. And burn out her own life like a candle flame in a hurricane. Choose quickly, Marcus advised. My patience grows thin, and Cale can't protect you in his current state. Elena looked at Cale's tense shoulders, at the pack members whose eyes held more desperation than loyalty, at Marcus with his cruel smile and magical power. Then she stepped around Cale and raised her hands. Actually, she said, silver light blazing around her like captured starfire, I think you're the one who needs to choose. Chapter 6. The silver light that blazed from Elena's hands died the moment she saw Dr. Harmon stumble through her broken doorway with blood streaming down his face. Elena, don't. Harmon gasped, held upright by 2 of Marcus's wolves. It's a trap. The whole thing is. One of his captors backhanded him into silence, and Elena's heart clenched. Whatever power she'd been about to unleash withered as fear for the man who'd protected her for 3 years overwhelmed her anger. Marcus smiled like he'd just won the lottery. Ah, there's the healer's weakness. Always more concerned with saving others than protecting yourself. He gestured to his wolves. Take her. No. The voice came from behind Marcus, feminine and commanding. A woman stepped through the ruined doorway, elderly but vital, with silver hair braided down her back and eyes that held the same wild intelligence Elena had seen in Kale's wolf form. You will not touch the child. Marcus spun around, his confidence faltering. Luna. I thought you were dead. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. Luna's gaze swept over the wolves holding Dr. Harmon, and several of them actually stepped back. Though yours might not be if you continue this foolishness. Elena felt Kale tense beside her. Luna, he breathed. How did you find you? I've been tracking the healer's awakening power for days. Luna stepped into Elena's ruined living room like she owned it. Elena Russo, granddaughter of Moira Brennan, last of the wolf healer bloodline. You have your grandmother's eyes. You knew my grandmother? Elena's voice came out as a whisper. I was her bonded wolf. Luna's expression softened. Moira saved my life more times than I can count, and I was with her when she died. She made me promise to find you if your powers ever awakened. Marcus snarled, his human form rippling with barely contained wolf energy. How touching. A family reunion. Unfortunately, it changes nothing. Elena comes with me, or the good doctor dies. Actually, Luna said conversationally, I brought friends. The howl started then, dozens of them, surrounding Elena's property. Through the windows, Elena could see wolves emerging from the tree line, their eyes glowing in the morning light. But these weren't Marcus's corrupted pack members. These wolves moved with purpose and coordination, and when they shifted to human form, Elena saw faces marked by determination rather than magical compulsion. The Northern Pack, Kale said, wonder in his voice. The real Northern Pack. Those still loyal to their true alpha, Luna confirmed. Marcus may have cursed you, but he never broke your pack bonds entirely. When word spread that you were free, they came. Marcus's confident expression cracked. Impossible. I control the Northern Pack now. You control the weak ones, Luna corrected. The ones too afraid to resist your magic or too corrupted to remember their true nature. But the strong ones, the loyal ones? They've been waiting for this moment. Elena watched the standoff develop, her mind racing. Dr. Harmon was still bleeding, still held captive. Marcus's remaining wolves were outnumbered but positioned to hurt innocent people. And somewhere out there, the Shadow Circle was still planning their ritual for tomorrow night. This is all very dramatic, Marcus said, his voice tight with fury, but it doesn't change the fundamental problem. Elena's power grows stronger every day, and if she doesn't learn to control it properly, she'll burn herself out before she can be of use to anyone. Which is why she needs proper training, Luna said, turning to Elena. Your grandmother could channel her power for hours without ill effect. You can learn the same techniques. There's no time, Elena protested. The blood moon rises tomorrow night, and the Shadow Circle plans to use that convergence to amplify whatever ritual they're planning, Luna finished. Yes, child, I know about the prophecy. I also know that rushing into battle untrained is exactly how young healers get themselves killed. Marcus laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Training? She doesn't need training, she needs to accept her destiny. The Shadow Circle offers Elena a choice, help us willingly, and we'll use her power to create the strongest werewolf army the world has ever seen. Refuse, and we'll take her power by force and use it anyway. Create an army? Kale stepped forward, his protective instincts overriding caution. Marcus, what the hell are you talking about? Evolution, brother. Marcus's eyes gleamed with fanatic fervor. The Shadow Circle has perfected a ritual that will bond werewolf essence to human soldiers, creating beings with our strength and healing but none of our weaknesses. No forced shifts during the full moon, no vulnerability to silver, no pack bonds to limit their loyalty. Elena felt sick. You want to create artificial werewolves. I want to create the perfect army. And with Elena's healing power to sustain the process, we can convert thousands of soldiers in a single night. The blood moon, Luna said grimly. They need the lunar convergence to power something that massive. Exactly. Marcus gestured to his wolves, and they began moving Dr. Harmon toward the door. So here's my final offer, Elena. Come with me now, help us with the ritual tomorrow night, and Dr. Harmon lives. Refuse, and he dies slowly while you listen to his screams. Elena looked between Marcus and Luna, between the man who'd been her protector for 3 years and the woman who claimed to have known her grandmother. Every instinct screamed that she couldn't trust Marcus, but Dr. Harmon had saved her life more than once. I need proof he's alive, she said finally. Marcus nodded to one of his wolves, who removed the gag from Dr. Harmon's mouth. Elena, Harmon said urgently, don't trust anyone. The Shadow Circle has been planning this for decades. They've been watching you, manipulating. The gag went back in, cutting off his words, but Elena had heard enough. She looked at Luna with new suspicion. How convenient that you appeared right when Marcus threatened me, Elena said slowly. How do I know you're not working with him? Luna's eyebrows rose. Because, child, if I were working with Marcus, would have delivered you to him already instead of bringing your mate's entire pack to rescue you. She's right, Kale said quietly. Luna was my pack's elder before Marcus took control. If anyone can teach you to use your power safely, it's her. Elena studied the older woman's face, searching for any sign of deception. Luna met her gaze steadily, and Elena saw something there that reminded her of her dreams, a wildness tempered by wisdom, strength coupled with compassion. All right, Elena said. But we're not abandoning Dr. Harmon. We get him back first, then we train. Marcus laughed. Oh, Elena. You still don't understand the scope of what you're dealing with. He pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. The Shadow Circle's stronghold is warded against your power and defended by both magic and mundane weapons. You'll never get past the outer perimeter, let alone reach the ritual chamber. Watch me, Elena said, silver light beginning to flicker around her hands again. Wait. Luna caught Elena's wrist, and the power subsided. He's right about the wards. You'll need to be much stronger to break through their defenses. Then teach me, Elena said fiercely. Whatever it takes. Luna studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. But Elena, this kind of intensive training will accelerate the cost to your lifespan. You could lose years in a matter of hours. Elena looked at Dr. Harmon's battered face, at Kale's desperate expression, at the loyal pack members who'd risked everything to stand with their true alpha. Then she thought about thousands of soldiers being turned into artificial werewolves under the Shadow Circle's control. Some things are worth the cost, she said quietly. Marcus shook his head in mock sympathy. Such a noble sacrifice. Too bad it won't matter. He gestured to his wolves, who began dragging Dr. Harmon away. You have until sunset tomorrow, Elena. After that, the ritual begins with or without your cooperation. As Marcus and his wolves disappeared into the forest, Luna placed a gentle hand on Elena's shoulder. Your grandmother would be proud, she said softly. She made the same choice once, though it cost her everything. Did it work? Elena asked. Her sacrifice, I mean. Did it accomplish what she hoped? Luna's expression grew somber. She saved the werewolf race from extinction. But Elena, the enemy she faced was nothing compared to what we're dealing with now. Elena squared her shoulders, feeling power coil restlessly under her skin. Then I guess I'll have to be stronger than she was. What Elena didn't know, what none of them knew, was that miles away in the Shadow Circle's stronghold, Dr. Harmon was finally alone with his captors. And the first thing he did was pull out a hidden communication device and send a single message. Subject is fully awakened and beginning intensive training. Proceeding to final phase as planned. The man Elena trusted most in the world had been reporting her every move to the enemy. And in less than 24 hours, the betrayal would nearly destroy everything she was fighting to save. But for now, Elena focused on Luna's instruction, on learning to channel power that burned like liquid fire through her veins, and on the desperate hope that she could become strong enough to save everyone she loved. Even if it killed her in the process. Chapter 7. The scream that tore from Elena's throat wasn't entirely human. She knelt in the center of Luna's training circle, power coursing through her body like molten silver, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. The magic that had always felt foreign, dangerous, suddenly felt like coming home. What's happening to me? Elena gasped, looking down at her hands. Her fingernails had elongated into claws, and her canine teeth felt too sharp for her mouth. Luna circled her slowly, amber eyes gleaming with satisfaction. You're accepting what you've always been, child. Wolf healers aren't human with magical abilities. You're a hybrid race, created when the first wolves chose to bond permanently with ancient druids. Elena stared at Luna in shock. The blood moon hung full and red overhead, its light making everything look like it was painted in blood. Around them, Kale's loyal pack members prepared for battle, but Elena could barely focus on anything beyond the revelation that was reshaping her understanding of herself. Hybrid, she repeated faintly. Your grandmother never told you because she hoped you'd never need to know. But Elena, this is why your healing power comes at such a cost when you fight it. You're trying to channel wolf magic through a purely human form. Kale appeared at Elena's side, having returned from scouting Marcus's stronghold. How is she? See for yourself, Luna said. Elena looked up at Kale, and he stepped back involuntarily. Her green eyes now held flecks of gold, and when she smiled, he could see the sharp points of emerging fangs. I'm not human, Elena said, and there was wonder in her voice instead of horror. Kale, I'm not human, and for the first time since my powers awakened, I don't feel like I'm dying. You're not dying, Luna confirmed. You're becoming what you were always meant to be. And just in time, because... The sound hit them like a physical blow, dozens of humans screaming in agony as dark magic tore through their bodies. The sound was coming from the Shadow Circle's stronghold, half a mile away through the forest. Marcus has started the ritual, Kale snarled, his own form beginning to ripple with the urge to shift. Elena rose to her feet, power flowing around her like liquid starlight. But this time, instead of the silver light that had characterized her healing magic, the energy was shot through with veins of deep gold, wolf magic mixing with her druidic heritage. Then we stop him, she said simply. The Shadow Circle's stronghold was a converted military bunker built into the mountainside, its concrete walls covered in carved symbols that made Elena's hybrid senses recoil. As they approached, the sounds of the ritual grew louder, not just screams now, but the wet sounds of bodies changing against their will. The wards are holding, Luna reported, pressing her hand against the barrier that surrounded the compound. I can't even touch them without pain. Elena stepped forward and placed her palm against the invisible barrier. Instead of burning her, the dark magic seemed to recognize something in her hybrid nature and allowed her to pass through. It's because I'm not fully anything, she realized. Not fully human, not fully wolf, not fully druid. The wards can't categorize me. She pulled Kale through the barrier with her, their bond allowing him to pass safely in her wake. Luna and the pack would have to find another way in. Inside the compound, the scene was worse than Elena's worst nightmares. Dozens of soldiers lay strapped to metal tables while hooded figures chanted around them. Dark energy poured into their bodies, and Elena could see their bones elongating, their muscles expanding, their human features reshaping into something more bestial. But these weren't becoming werewolves, they were becoming abominations. The magic was wrong, twisted, turning them into monsters that would know only hunger and obedience. At the center of it all stood Marcus, his arms raised toward the blood moon visible through a skylight. Power flowed from him into a complex ritual circle carved into the stone floor. And bound to an altar at the circle's heart was Dr. Harmon, very much alive and very clearly not a prisoner. Elena, Harmon called when he saw her. Thank God you're here. I was afraid Marcus would complete the ritual before you could deliver me to him personally. Elena interrupted, her hybrid senses picking up the truth her human mind had missed. How long, Dr. Harmon? How long have you been working with them? Harmon's face fell, and he stopped pretending. Since the beginning. We've been watching your family for generations, waiting for a healer strong enough to power this ritual. The betrayal hit Elena like a physical blow, but her hybrid nature cushioned the emotional impact. The wolf side of her had never fully trusted the doctor, had always sensed something off about his scent, his mannerisms. You protected me just to deliver me when I was ready, Elena said. I kept you alive and functional, Harmon corrected. The shadow circle needed you at full power. Marcus turned from his ritual, smiling when he saw Elena and Kale. Brother. Healer. How good of you to join us for the culmination of 20 years of planning. Around them, the converted soldiers began to stir on their tables, their transformation nearing completion. In minutes, Marcus would have an army of unstoppable monsters at his command. Stop this, Elena demanded, power crackling around her clawed hands. These people didn't choose this. Choice is a luxury the strong provide to the weak, Marcus replied. These soldiers will serve a greater purpose than they ever could have as mere humans. Kale moved to flank Marcus, but the corrupted Alpha was ready for him. Dark energy lashed out, and Kale cried out as the magic struck him, sending him crashing into the stone wall. Elena felt Kale's pain through their bond and snarled, her hybrid nature surging to the surface. You want my power, Marcus? You can have it. She raised her hands, and instead of the controlled healing energy she'd always used, she let her full heritage flow free. Wolf magic, druid magic, and something else, something uniquely hers as the bridge between worlds. The power that erupted from Elena was unlike anything she'd ever channeled. It didn't burn her or drain her life force, it felt like finally breathing after holding her breath for years. The dark magic powering Marcus's ritual circle began to crack under the assault of Elena's hybrid energy. The soldiers on the table stopped convulsing as the corruption was burned away from their transforming bodies. But Marcus wasn't finished. He pulled a curved knife from his belt and pressed it to Dr. Harmon's throat. Stop, or your precious guardian dies, he snarled. Elena paused, her power flickering. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, she couldn't watch Harmon die. Don't, Kale said, struggling to his feet. Elena, he's been lying to you for years. He's not worth. Everyone is worth saving, Elena said firmly. That's what makes us different from them. But as she spoke, she felt something else through her bond with Kale, a shared power that was more than the sum of their parts. Their connection as true mates, amplified by her hybrid nature and his alpha strength. Together, she said, extending her hand to Kale. We do this together. Kale took her hand, and their combined power flowed through their bond like a completed circuit. Elena could feel Kale's wolf strength merging with her hybrid magic, creating something entirely new. The energy that surrounded them now was golden white, pure and devastating. It swept through the ritual chamber like a cleansing fire, destroying Marcus's dark magic and healing the damage done to the converted soldiers. Marcus screamed as his power was torn away from him, the artificial enhancements the shadow circle had given him crumbling under the assault of pure wolf healer magic. Impossible, he gasped, falling to his knees. You're just one healer. You can't. I'm not just one healer, Elena said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated with wolf and human ears alike. I'm the bridge between two worlds, bonded to my true mate, and I choose to save instead of destroy. As the last of Marcus's dark magic was cleansed away, Elena felt something settle into place inside her, a sense of rightness, of purpose fulfilled. She wasn't losing her humanity by embracing her hybrid nature. She was finally becoming complete. The soldiers were stirring on their tables, human again but alive. Marcus lay unconscious, his artificial power stripped away. Dr. Harmon cowered against the altar, his betrayal exposed but his life spared. It's over, Kale said, squeezing Elena's hand. But even as they stood victorious in the ruined ritual chamber, Elena could feel something new stirring through their bond, a potential she'd never imagined, a future that stretched out before them full of possibilities. She wasn't just the last wolf healer anymore. She was the first of something new, and with Kale at her side, she could help build a world where humans and werewolves no longer had to hide from each other. The blood moon was setting, but Elena had never felt more alive. Chapter 8. Marcus rose from the ritual chamber floor like a man possessed, dark energy crackling around him despite Elena's cleansing magic. "You think you've won?" he snarled, his eyes blazing with power that shouldn't have been possible. "You think stripping away my artificial enhancements means anything when I still carry the blood of true alphas?" Elena stepped back, instinctively pushing Kale behind her as she felt Marcus's werewolf nature surge stronger than ever. Without the shadow circle's corrupting magic, his natural abilities were actually more dangerous. "That's impossible," Kale breathed. "Your power should be gone." "The shadow circle gave me artificial strength, yes," Marcus said, advancing on them with predatory grace. "But I was born an alpha, brother. That power runs deeper than any magic they could strip away." A slow clap echoed through the chamber, and Elena spun to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a woman in expensive clothes with silver hair and cold blue eyes that held depths of cruelty Elena had never imagined. "Magnificent," the woman said, studying Elena like she was a prized specimen. 23 years of careful breeding and manipulation, and you've finally become everything we hoped you would be." "Who are you?" Elena demanded, power flickering around her clawed hands. "Director Catherine Vale, true leader of the Shadow Circle." The woman smiled with genuine warmth that somehow made her more terrifying than Marcus's rage. "And in a very real sense, dear child, I'm your creator." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "What do you mean?" "Your parents didn't meet by chance, Elena. We arranged their introduction, guided their courtship, ensured their union would produce exactly the hybrid we needed." Vale moved closer, her voice taking on an almost maternal tone. "You were conceived for a specific purpose, to become powerful enough to rewrite the fundamental laws that govern supernatural beings." "You're lying," Elena said, but something cold was settling in her stomach. "Your mother was the last pure-blooded wolf healer. Your father was descended from the first druids to bond with wolves. We needed their combined bloodlines to create someone with the power to alter supernatural bonds themselves." Vale gestured elegantly to the ruined ritual chamber. "Marcus's army was just a test, dear. Your real purpose is so much grander." Elena looked at Kale, seeing her own horror reflected in his amber eyes. Everything, her parents' meeting, her birth, even her rescue of Kale, had been orchestrated by people who saw her as nothing more than a weapon to be shaped and wielded. "You want me to rewrite supernatural bonds," Elena said slowly, understanding flooding through her. "You want me to change what werewolves are." "I want you to perfect them," Vale corrected. "Imagine werewolves with no weakness to silver, no forced transformations, no pack hierarchies that limit their potential. Imagine supernatural beings who could live openly among humans without fear or prejudice. By destroying everything that makes them who they are," Kale snarled. "By evolving them beyond primitive limitations." Vale's eyes gleamed with fanatic fervor. "Elena has the power to remake every supernatural being on Earth. She could create a world where humans and werewolves truly are equals." Elena felt the power stirring inside her, not just healing magic, but something deeper. The ability to reach into the very essence of what made a werewolf and change it. The temptation was overwhelming. She could end the persecution, the hiding, the constant fear that defined supernatural life. "No," she said quietly. Vale's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I beg your pardon?" "I said no." Elena stepped forward, her hybrid nature fully manifesting as claws extended and golden light began to dance around her. "You don't get to decide what werewolves should become. You don't get to remake an entire race because you think you know better." "Elena," Vale said, her voice taking on a dangerous edge, "you were created for this purpose. It's literally what you were born to do." "I was born to choose," Elena replied. "And I choose to protect what already exists, not destroy it in the name of improvement." Marcus laughed, the sound harsh and bitter. "How noble. Too bad you won't live long enough to regret that choice." He lunged at Elena with supernatural speed, but she was ready for him. Instead of fighting or fleeing, Elena did something that surprised everyone in the chamber, including herself. She reached out with her power and touched the very core of what made Marcus a werewolf. Not to destroy it, but to understand it. To see the intricate web of magic and biology that allowed him to shift between human and wolf form. And then, with surgical precision, she began to unweave it. Marcus stopped mid-attack, his face going white with terror. "What are you doing?" "Giving you what you've always wanted," Elena said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated with supernatural hearing. "Freedom from pack bonds. Freedom from wolf nature. Freedom from everything that makes you what you are." The change wasn't violent or painful. Marcus simply became less, his enhanced strength fading, his supernatural senses dulling, his connection to the wolf side of his nature dissolving like morning mist. In seconds, he went from alpha werewolf to ordinary human. "You can't," Marcus whispered, staring at his now normal hands. "You can't just take away what I am." "I can," Elena said sadly. "But I won't do it to anyone who doesn't deserve it." Vale applauded slowly. "Remarkable. You've discovered your true ability even faster than we predicted. And I'm using it to end your little experiment," Elena said, turning to face the Shadow Circle leader. "I could strip you of whatever enhancements you've given yourself, make you as human as Marcus. But that would make me no better than you." "Then what do you propose?" Vale asked, genuinely curious. Elena looked around the ruined chamber, at the human soldiers who were slowly recovering from their forced transformation, at Kale who watched her with absolute trust despite everything they'd learned. "I propose something you never considered," Elena said. "Acceptance." She raised her hands, and instead of the destructive power Vale expected, Elena began to weave something entirely new. Magic flowed from her in golden streams, settling over every supernatural being in the chamber like a blessing. "What are you doing?" Vale demanded. "Creating a choice," Elena explained. "Every werewolf, every supernatural being who wants it, can now live openly among humans without fear. Not because I've changed what they are, but because I've given them the ability to reveal themselves safely." The magic Elena was weaving wasn't altering supernatural nature, it was creating a field of acceptance, a psychic influence that would make humans more open to the existence of other beings. Not mind control, but a gentle nudging toward tolerance and understanding. "A sanctuary," Kale breathed, understanding immediately. "You're creating a place where supernatural beings can be themselves without hiding." "The beginning of one," Elena confirmed. "Here in Cedar Falls, werewolves can live as werewolves. Other supernatural beings can exist without fear. And humans can learn that we're not monsters, we're just different." Vale's face twisted with rage. "You're wasting your potential. You could reshape the world." "I am reshaping the world," Elena said calmly. "Just not the way you wanted." A new voice spoke from the chamber entrance, warm and achingly familiar despite being impossible. "Well done, granddaughter." Elena spun around and felt her heart stop. Standing in the doorway was an elderly woman with Elena's green eyes and silver hair braided with flowers, a woman who should have been dead for over 20 years. "Grandmother?" Elena whispered. Moira Brennan stepped into the chamber, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced down much worse than the Shadow Circle. "Hello, dear one. I'm sorry for the deception, but you needed to make these choices on your own." "You're supposed to be dead," Elena said faintly. "I let people believe I was dead so I could watch over you properly." Moira's eyes swept over Vale and Marcus with obvious disdain. "The Shadow Circle has been trying to manipulate our bloodline for generations. I needed to ensure you grew strong enough to resist them. This was all a test." Elena looked between her grandmother and the ruins of the ritual chamber. "Everything that happened?" "Not a test," Moira corrected gently. "A journey. You needed to discover your own power, make your own choices, find your own mate." She smiled at Kale. "Though I admit I didn't expect you to pick up a cursed alpha along the way." Vale snarled and reached for something in her coat, but Moira was faster. The older woman gestured casually, and Vale froze in place, held by magic that felt ancient and implacable. "Catherine," Moira said conversationally, "you've caused quite enough trouble for one lifetime." With another gesture, Vale simply vanished, not destroyed, but removed, sent somewhere far from anything she could threaten. Where did you send her? Elena asked. Somewhere she can think about her choices for a very long time, Moira replied cryptically. Now then, shall we discuss your future? I believe you have a pack territory to establish and a mate to properly bond with. Elena looked at Kale, seeing wonder and love and unshakable devotion in his amber eyes. Despite everything, the deception, the manipulation, the revelation that her entire life had been orchestrated, what she felt for him was real. What happens now? She asked. Now you build the life you choose, Moira said simply. You have the power to protect this sanctuary you've created, the wisdom to use it responsibly, and a mate strong enough to stand beside you through whatever comes next. Elena felt something new stirring through her bond with Kale, not just love or shared power, but potential. The possibility of a future neither of them had dared to imagine. Children who could bridge the gap between human and supernatural. A pack that welcomed both species. A world where hiding was no longer necessary. There will be other threats, Kale warned. Other enemies who want to use or control supernatural beings. Elena smiled, feeling her hybrid nature settle into comfortable balance. Let them come. We'll face them together. As the blood moon finally set over Cedar Falls, Elena stood with her mate and her grandmother in the ruins of the Shadow Circle's ambitions, planning a future that was entirely their own making. And for the first time since her powers had awakened, she felt truly free. Epilogue. 1 year later. Elena woke to the sound of children's laughter drifting through her bedroom window and the warm weight of Kale's arm around her waist. Sunlight streamed across their bed, painting everything golden, and for a moment she just lay there savoring the peace of it all. Sounds like the Morrison twins are up early again, Kale murmured against her neck, his voice still rough with sleep. Elena stretched contentedly. Their parents are probably grateful for a few extra minutes of quiet. The Morrison family had been among the first to relocate to Cedar Falls after word spread through the supernatural community about Elena's sanctuary. James Morrison was a werewolf who'd spent years hiding his nature from his human wife Sarah. Now their 8-year-old twins could shift freely in the safety of their backyard, and Sarah volunteered at Elena's expanded veterinary clinic where she'd become an expert at treating supernatural ailments. Elena rolled over to face her husband, still a thrill, that word, even 6 months after their bonding ceremony, and smiled at his sleep-mussed hair. Good morning, Alpha. Good morning, beautiful. Kale's amber eyes held the same warmth and devotion they'd carried since the night he'd first been freed from his curse. How are you feeling? It was a question he'd asked every morning for the past 3 months, ever since Dr. Martinez had confirmed what Elena's enhanced senses had already told her. She placed his hand on her still flat stomach, covering it with her own. We're perfect, she said softly. The baby would be the first of a new generation, part wolf healer, part alpha werewolf, completely unique. Dr. Martinez, a supernatural-friendly physician Moira had recommended, assured them the pregnancy was progressing normally, though normal was a relative term when dealing with hybrid genetics. Your grandmother's going to spoil this child rotten, Kale said, pressing a gentle kiss to Elena's forehead. Elena laughed. She's already started. Did you see the nursery yesterday? She's covered every surface with protective wards and blessing symbols. Moira had moved into the guest house behind Elena's clinic 6 months ago, claiming she wanted to be close when the next generation arrived. In reality, Elena suspected her grandmother simply enjoyed having family nearby after decades of isolation. Moira had taken over the more complex magical aspects of maintaining the sanctuary's protections, freeing Elena to focus on her practice and the growing supernatural community that called Cedar Falls home. A soft knock at their bedroom door interrupted Elena's thoughts. Elena? Kale? We've got a situation. That was Danny Chen, one of Kale's pack members who'd taken on the role of community coordinator. His tone was urgent but not panicked. They'd all learned to distinguish between real emergencies and the minor dramas that came with any close-knit community. Coming, Kale called, already reaching for clothes. 20 minutes later, Elena found herself standing in the town square that had become the unofficial heart of their supernatural sanctuary. About 30 people had gathered, wolves, humans, and several of the other supernatural beings who'd found their way to Cedar Falls over the past year. "What's the problem?" Elena asked Danny. "Not a problem exactly," Danny said, grinning. "More like an opportunity. We've got visitors." He gestured toward Main Street, where a convoy of cars was parked. Elena could see families unloading luggage and children staring around with wide eyes. Her enhanced senses picked up the distinctive energy signatures of werewolves, but also something else, vampires, she realized with surprise. "The Ravencroft Coven," Cale said, recognition in his voice. "I haven't seen them in years." An elegant woman with dark hair and pale skin approached them, moving with the fluid grace Elena had learned to associate with vampires. Behind her came a group of adults and teenagers, all carrying the same otherworldly beauty. "Cale McReynolds," the woman said warmly. "When we heard you'd established a true sanctuary, we had to see it for ourselves." "Elena," Cale said, "meet Victoria Ravencroft. Her coven has been looking for a permanent home for decades." Elena studied the vampire matriarch, noting the weariness beneath her composed exterior. "You're welcome here, if you're willing to live peacefully alongside humans and werewolves." "That's all we've ever wanted," Victoria said simply. "A place where our children can grow up without fear, where we don't have to hide what we are." "Then you're home," Elena said, meaning it completely. As the day progressed, Elena watched the established residents of Cedar Falls welcome the Vampire Coven with the same openness they'd shown every new arrival. Mrs. Henderson from next door brought over a casserole for the vampire families, cheerfully ignoring the fact that they couldn't eat it. The Morrison twins immediately challenged the vampire children to a game of tag that quickly turned into an impromptu flying lesson. By evening, Elena stood on her clinic's front porch with Cale, watching their extraordinary community settle in for the night. String lights twinkled between the trees, and the sound of mixed laughter, human, werewolf, and vampire, drifted on the warm air. "Do you ever miss it?" Elena asked suddenly. "Miss what?" "The simplicity. When you were just a regular alpha with a regular pack, dealing with regular werewolf politics." Cale was quiet for a moment, considering. "Do you miss being a regular veterinarian who thought the biggest supernatural mystery was why some dogs seemed too smart for their own good?" Elena laughed, remembering the pink collar and kibble bowl that had once represented the height of indignity to her proud alpha mate. "Not for a second." "Then there's your answer." Cale pulled her closer, his hands settling protectively over her stomach. "This is messy and complicated and probably impossible according to everything our species have been taught for centuries. It's also the most meaningful thing I've ever been part of." A warm breeze carried the scent of Moira's herb garden and the sound of teenagers from 3 different species arguing good-naturedly about the rules of some hybrid game they'd invented. Elena breathed it all in, storing the moment like a treasure. "I love you," she said, simple and true. "I love you too," Cale replied. "Both of you." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching over their impossible, wonderful community. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. It always did when you were building something that had never existed before. But tonight, Elena was content to savor the peace they'd fought so hard to create. In the distance, a wolf howled, not in loneliness or warning, but in pure joy. The sound was quickly answered by others, a chorus of voices celebrating life and freedom and the simple miracle of home. Elena smiled and rested her head against Cale's shoulder, feeling their child flutter softly beneath her heart. Whatever came next, they would face it together, surrounded by the family they'd chosen and the community they'd built. They were home. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share and subscribe for more wonderful tales from us.